My name is Stacy Mitchell, and this is the story of how my life changed forever on a small ranch in Idaho. I remember the exact moment it all began. A crisp September morning when frost still clung to the grass and my breath formed clouds in the dawn air. I'd inherited the ranch from my Aunt Clara, much to everyone's surprise. While my cousins got her money and stocks, I got this sprawling piece of land complete with 3 horses. At 32, fresh from a brutal divorce in Seattle, it seemed like fate had finally thrown me a lifeline. That morning, I was introducing myself to the horses, my horses now. 2 were standard quarter horses, friendly enough but nothing special. But then there was Atlas. Standing 17 hands high with a coat like polished obsidian and eyes that seemed to pierce right through me, he was magnificent and terrifying. He's particular about people, Miguel, the ranch hand who'd stayed on to help me transition, warned. Your aunt was the only one he really trusted. Atlas watched me from his stall, ears pricked forward with interest. I approached slowly, hand extended. His nostrils flared, taking in my scent. Then, to Miguel's visible shock, he stepped forward and pressed his muzzle into my palm. Dios mío, Miguel whispered. He never does that. Something electric passed between us in that moment. A recognition, a connection I couldn't explain. His breath was warm against my skin, and those intelligent eyes seemed to look straight into my soul. The next few weeks passed in a blur of learning. Miguel taught me everything: feeding schedules, grooming techniques, basic veterinary care. But with Atlas, everything came naturally. He responded to my slightest touch, anticipated my movements. Our morning rides became the highlight of my days. It was during one of these rides that I first noticed the change in him around other animals. A neighbor's dog had followed us on the trail, yapping excitedly. Atlas's ears flattened, his muscles tensing beneath me. The usual gentle giant became possessive, positioning himself between me and the dog until it ran off. He's protecting you, Miguel observed when I mentioned it. But be careful, señorita. Horses can develop strong attachments, sometimes too strong. I should have heeded his warning, but I was too caught up in the intoxicating freedom of my new life. Atlas and I spent hours exploring the trails, his powerful body moving beneath me like liquid silk. I found myself talking to him, sharing secrets I'd never told another soul. He would listen, those dark eyes fixed on me, understanding in a way no human ever had. Every evening, I'd linger in the stable longer than necessary. Atlas would rest his massive head on my shoulder as I brushed him, his warmth seeping through my clothes. The divorce, my ex's betrayal, my mother's constant disappointment, all of it seemed to fade when I was with him. But his possessive behavior grew more noticeable. It wasn't just dogs anymore. When Sarah, my closest neighbor, came over for coffee one morning, Atlas threw a fit in his paddock, pawing the ground and snorting until she left. Even Miguel started keeping his distance, shooting me concerned looks when Atlas would pin his ears back at anyone who approached me. He's becoming too attached, Miguel finally said one evening. It's not natural, señorita. The way he watches you, follows your every movement. I dismissed his concerns, but deep down, I knew something was shifting. Atlas had started refusing to let other riders near him, even experienced ones. He saved his gentleness for me alone. At night, I'd sometimes wake to the sound of him calling from the stable, as if checking that I was still there. Then came the incident with my mother's dog. She'd driven up from Boise for an unexpected visit, bringing her precious golden retriever, Bo. I was showing her around the property when Atlas charged the fence, teeth bared. Bo ran yelping behind my mother's legs. That beast is dangerous, Mother declared, clutching her pearl necklace. Really, Stacy? First you isolate yourself on this godforsaken ranch, and now you're keeping dangerous animals? He's not dangerous, I protested. He's just protective. Protective? She arched an eyebrow. The way he looks at you, it's unnatural. Dr. Phillips mentioned something similar happening to a woman in Wyoming. She became so obsessed with her horse that she... Mother, stop! My voice was sharp. Atlas is my responsibility now. He trusts me. That's what worries me, darling. He more than trusts you. And you. She paused, watching me stroke Atlas's neck through the fence. You're becoming dependent on him. When was the last time you went on a date? Met new people? You spend all your time with this animal? That evening in the stable, the air thick with summer's lingering warmth, something shifted. Atlas watched intently as I groomed him, his dark eyes following my every move. My hands trembled while brushing his muscled flanks, an unfamiliar heat building inside me. Without conscious thought, one hand drifted to my waistband. Atlas's breathing deepened, matching my own quickening gasps. The brush fell forgotten in the hay as desire overtook reason. His powerful presence pressed closer as my fingers found their mark. Our eyes locked in the dim, stable light, beast and woman lost in a moment of pure instinct. My other hand gripped his mane as waves of pleasure built. His warmth radiated through me as I surrendered to sensations I'd never known before. Later, weak-kneed and flushed, guilt and confusion warred in my mind. What was happening to me? This connection went beyond anything natural or proper. Yet I couldn't deny the profound rightness I'd felt in that moment of abandon. Late at night in my clawfoot tub, Atlas's nickering carrying through the window, I found my hands wandering in the warm water. Images of his muscled form, his raw power, flooded my mind unbidden. The steam rising around me couldn't match the heat building in my core. During my morning runs along secluded forest trails, I'd pause against rough tree bark to satisfy sudden urges that overwhelmed me. The scent of pine needles mingled with memories of his musky, stable smell as ecstasy washed over me. One afternoon in the hayloft, dust motes dancing in sunbeams, I surrendered to primal need. Atlas's deep breaths echoed below as my fingers traced familiar paths. His occasional snort sent shivers through my trembling body until waves of pleasure crested. Each encounter left me both sated and ashamed, yet I couldn't stop the growing obsession. My thoughts constantly drifted to him, his strength, his devotion, the way his powerful body responded to my slightest touch. Stolen moments in the paddock behind the barn, even pressed against his stall door. Everywhere held memories of forbidden release. His presence always nearby, watching, protecting, claiming me in ways no human ever had. Over wine one evening, Sarah noticed the change in me. We sat on my porch, watching Atlas graze in the pasture, when she finally asked what was different. "You're glowing lately," she said, studying me. "Despite being alone out here, there's something, I can't put my finger on it." The wine and months of secrecy loosened my tongue. "Can you keep a secret?" I whispered. "Something unconventional?" I told her everything, the growing bond, the electric connection, the way Atlas had become more than just a horse to me. Her eyes widened, but she didn't judge. "Show me," she breathed, leaning forward. "I want to understand." The next evening, Sarah came over. Atlas watched intently as we entered his stable, his nostrils flaring at her scent. I demonstrated our special grooming routine, how my hands would linger on his powerful muscles, the way he responded to my touch. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, watching us interact. "I've never seen anything like this." She moved closer, reaching out to touch him. Atlas snorted, backing away. "He only wants me," I explained, pressing against his warm flank. His heartbeat thundered against my palm as Sarah observed our intimate connection. "This is intense," she murmured. "Does anyone else know?" "Just you," I replied. "You understand why I can't tell others?" She nodded, transfixed by our display. "Your secret's safe, but Stacy, be careful. This kind of love, it's powerful." In the golden glow of lantern light, Sarah and I shared furtive glances. Atlas nickered softly as she joined me on the hay bales. Our hands found each other as his powerful presence filled the stable. The air grew thick with unspoken desire as we explored new territory together. Sarah understood now. The raw magnetism, the primal pull. Atlas watched intently as soft gasps echoed in the dim space. Our fingers intertwined while his warmth radiated through us. "I get it now," Sarah breathed, trembling. This connection, it's beyond words. Heat bloomed between us as Atlas's hooves shifted in the straw. The stable felt electric with shared energy as we surrendered to base instincts. His occasional snorts matched our quickening breaths. Later, flushed and disheveled, we lay back in the sweet hay. Atlas's massive form stood guard nearby, accepting Sarah now as an extension of me. A profound understanding passed between us all. "This stays between us," Sarah whispered. I nodded, knowing we'd crossed a threshold. Our friendship had evolved into something deeper, bound by this sacred secret. "Stacy, we need to talk," Sarah said softly, curled up on my porch swing. Her fingers traced the rim of her wine glass, eyes fixed on Atlas grazing in the distance. "I see what's happening with you and Atlas. The way you look at him, how you've withdrawn from everything else." I tensed, clutching my own glass tighter. "I thought you understood. After last week in the stable." "I do understand. Maybe too well." She reached for my hand. "That's why I'm worried. You've created this beautiful, intense world here, but you're losing touch with everything else. When's the last time you left the ranch? Called your mother? Had a real date?" "I don't need—" "Yes, you do," she interrupted gently. "What you have with Atlas is special, magical even. But you need human connection too. Balance." The truth in her words stung. I watched Atlas's powerful form moving in the twilight, remembering all our intimate moments. In the stable, the hayloft, against his stall door. The way his presence filled every corner of my life. "There's someone I think you should meet," Sarah continued carefully. "My brother James. He's a large animal vet, specializes in horses. He'd understand this connection you have. He's seen similar bonds before." "No one could understand," I whispered, but something in her description caught my interest. "Just dinner at my place. If it's awful, you never have to see him again." She squeezed my hand. "But Stacy, you need to let someone else in. Someone who can love all of you, including your relationship with Atlas." A week later, I found myself at Sarah's dining table, face to face with James. He was ruggedly handsome in an understated way. Tall, broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of years working with animals. His quiet confidence reminded me of Atlas. "Sarah's told me about your stallion," he said, pouring me wine. "Atlas sounds remarkable. Not many people can earn that level of trust from such a powerful animal." Something in his voice, professional interest mixed with genuine understanding, made me look closer. Throughout dinner, he shared stories of extraordinary bonds he'd witnessed between humans and animals. "Had this client in Montana," he recalled, "wealthy woman who inherited a wolf-dog hybrid. Everyone said it was dangerous, needed to be put down, but she understood him in a way no one else could. They had this connection." His eyes met mine. Sometimes these bonds transcend normal understanding. I felt my defenses lowering. Would you like to meet him?" The walk to my stable was charged with nervous energy. Atlas's ears pricked forward as we entered. No pinning back, no aggressive posturing like he usually showed around men. "Magnificent," James breathed, maintaining a respectful distance. "You can see why your aunt trusted only him. That level of intelligence, that power, he's extraordinary." "He's everything," I whispered before I could stop myself. James turned to me, his expression soft. "I can see that, and that's okay. The best relationships, human or animal, change us fundamentally, make us more ourselves." For the first time since my connection with Atlas had deepened, I felt truly seen by another person. James didn't judge or try to explain away what Atlas and I shared. He simply accepted it as part of who I was. "Would you like to see how I work with him?" I heard myself asking. His smile was warm, understanding. "I'd be honored." James watched intently as I demonstrated my grooming routine with Atlas. His veterinarian's eyes missed nothing, The way Atlas leaned into my touch, how his muscles rippled beneath my hands, the deep rumbling sounds of contentment he made. "Your technique is fascinating," he noted, moving closer, but still keeping a respectful distance. "You're not just grooming, you're communicating." Heat bloomed in my cheeks. If he only knew how deep that communication went. Atlas shifted, pressing against me possessively while eyeing James. "He's claiming you," James observed quietly, but not aggressively. "He's secure enough in your bond to allow my presence. That's remarkable." My hands trembled slightly as they moved over Atlas's gleaming coat. The stable felt charged with unspoken energy. My secret desires, Atlas's protective presence, James's knowing gaze. "I've seen bonds like this before," James continued, his voice low and intimate. "Rare, profound connections that go beyond conventional understanding. But the handlers who manage best are those who find balance, who let that bond enhance their lives rather than consume them." His words struck deep. I thought of all my stolen moments with Atlas, the way I'd withdrawn from human contact, how my world had narrowed to just this stable and this horse. "Sometimes," James stepped closer, making Atlas's ears twitch, "the right person can help maintain that balance. Someone who understands both worlds." Our eyes met in the lantern light. Something electric passed between us. Understanding, acceptance, possibility. Atlas nickered softly, as if giving approval. "Would you like to join me for a trail ride tomorrow?" I asked impulsively. "There's a beautiful valley I'd like to show you." James smiled, reaching out slowly to let Atlas catch his scent. "I'd love that. And maybe afterward we could have dinner, talk more about these special bonds." The next morning dawned crisp and clear. James arrived early, dressed in well-worn riding gear that showed he knew his way around horses. Atlas watched intently as I saddled him, his muscles twitching when James approached. "Easy, boy," I whispered, stroking Atlas's neck. "He's different." James mounted one of my quarter horses, giving us space as we set out. The autumn air was thick with possibility as we rode side by side, Atlas occasionally tossing his head when James's horse got too close. "He's still protective," James noted with a knowing smile. "But he's tolerating me. That's progress." In the secluded valley, surrounded by golden aspens, we dismounted near a stream. Atlas grazed nearby, keeping one eye on us as James spread out a blanket. "Tell me," he said softly, "when did your connection with Atlas become more?" My breath caught. "You know?" "I've seen it before," he replied, moving closer. "These bonds can become intensely intimate. The way you touch him, how he responds, it's beyond normal horse and rider." Heat flooded my face as I remembered all my private moments in the stable. "Does it disgust you?" "No," James whispered, his hand finding mine. "It fascinates me. You've achieved something rare and beautiful. But Stacy," his other hand cupped my cheek, "you deserve human touch too." When his lips met mine, Atlas snorted sharply, but he didn't charge or interfere. He watched as James pulled me closer, as my body remembered what human passion felt like. Later, flushed and breathless on the blanket, I felt torn between two worlds. James sensed my conflict. "We can go slowly," he murmured. "Find a balance between all types of love." Over the next months, a delicate balance emerged. James became a regular presence at the ranch, his understanding nature helping me bridge two worlds I thought impossible to reconcile. Atlas gradually accepted him, though he'd still show flashes of jealousy when James stayed overnight, but there was enough love to go around. Morning rides remained my private time with Atlas, while evenings increasingly belonged to James. "You're blossoming," Sarah observed over coffee one spring morning. "The wild look in your eyes is gone. You seem content." She was right. The desperate, all-consuming need that had driven me to seek comfort in Atlas's stable had mellowed into something healthier. I still felt our special connection, but it no longer controlled me. James moved in that summer, converting the old tack room into a home veterinary office. Having him there seemed to settle Atlas too, as if the stallion understood this man wasn't a threat to our bond, but an addition to our strange family. Our wedding was small, held in the pasture where it all began. Atlas stood at the fence line, watching as James and I exchanged vows. His presence felt like a blessing. Now, years later, I can look back on that desperate time with understanding rather than shame. Atlas remains my special companion, but he's no longer my everything. James gave me the balance I needed, someone who could love all of me, even the parts others might not understand. Sometimes at dusk, I still visit Atlas alone. We share quiet moments of grooming, and I feel echoes of that old intensity. But now it's tempered with wisdom and perspective. I learned that love, in all its forms, doesn't have to consume you to be real. You saved me, I whisper to Atlas as he nuzzles my hair. But James helped me save myself. And in the growing darkness, as I head back to the warmth of my husband's embrace, I hear Atlas's soft nickering. Not possessive anymore, but accepting. We've all found our place in this unconventional love story,